Hello, this is A Beautiful Literature. I am so glad that you could join me today. I want to thank you for even the support, even for watching the other videos. And today we want to look at chapter 5 of the Fathers of Nations. We have been doing the series on chapter analysis because we need, before we go into the themes and the styles, we need to understand the story first. If we don't understand the story, it will therefore become very difficult even for us to do the analysis of the rest of the text. And so we are looking at chapter 5, and we closed chapter 4 with a discussion between Fiona and Dr. Afolabi when they're in the hotel after Fiona is just about to be assaulted by the Liberian mullah. And Dr. Afolabi rescues her, and they go to his room, and you realize that out of that is when Dr. Afolabi realizes that there is someone who's been listening to their conversations, and he's not very happy about it because he has an identity to close, he has an identity to cover, because he's playing both sides of the government and the heads of state, and AGDA also. And so therefore we have, in that conversation between Fiona and Dr. Afolabi, we learned that he's divorced, that he has no wife, but we didn't know how he got divorced, what really happened. And in chapter 5 is where we get to meet exactly what happened to Dr. Afolabi and how did he end up being a divorcee. So Dr. Afolabi is, we begin with him being invited to Banjul. Remember, he's from Nigeria. And so he's invited to Banjul to serve as an advisor to a summit of the heads of state. And so in this very important responsibility that he has been asked to also, before that he had been asked to have a conversation, to attend a meeting at the Foundation of Democratic Rule in Washington, where he was supposed to give a keynote address to the annual conference that was there. So in that conference, when he was on his way back from that conference, is when they get to meet with Mr. Longway, and Mr. Longway is able to tell him about Path Alpha. But before we go to the discussion between Dr. Afolabi and Mr. Longway, therefore we need to understand what happened between Dr. Afolabi and his wife. And we realize that his wife is called Pamela, and Pamela is American. She's a white lady, and that's the wife. And so they have traveled together. The wife has not been home for over 6 years. She has not seen her dad. And so she's very excited that at least now, together with the husband, because of the arrangement that is there for them to travel together with the husband, she'll be able to go see the father. And the father who lives alone in Boston. And so from the conversation, from the experiences that we have, we realize that Pamela's father is very lonely, and we see him in a convenience store, I think the supermarket of our time, where he's going to buy something. He's supposed to be going to buy something, but from the conversation that he's having with the girl at the registry, the girl who is registered, the one who is receiving the cash, you realize that this man did not have plans of buying anything. He actually was just looking for an opportunity to step out there and meet with human beings, and meet with other people, and socially interact with other people. And from the conversation they have, you realize that he's a very good old man, and was very excited about a watch that he had. He's calling his my baby, who is able to take my blood pressure and be able to tell me, and also keep a record of what my readings have been for the blood pressure for the past some time. And so you realize that he's willing to just share that information, and is very excited about it. And the girl indulges him and listens to him, but there's a queue of other people who needed to be served, and they were also a bit patient, and they allowed him to just get engaged. And finally the girl tells him, you've got to move on now that you're not buying something today, then because I need to serve the other people. And that experience is important because it takes us back to a theme that is very critical, especially on issues of family. And you realize that Dr. Afolabi, there is a mention that he says, that is on page 66, he says that he noticed in the streets of America, he says, it had more old people now than during his Harvard years as a student. its citizens were living longer. In days gone, the old would have been staying with the young as they did in his Africa, in the care of kith and kin until they died. Now they lived alone in their own homes, empty of relatives or joined contemporaries in old people's homes. And so it highlights the difference between the lifestyle and the cultural differences between Africans and the Americans or even those other countries. And here in Africa, we know that rarely will you take our family, our aged family members somewhere else and in the home for the aged. Rarely does that happen. Of course, there are those few situations where that has to happen, but in this case, in Africa, we stay with them until they pass on. And Dr. Afolabi is quick to note that actually now there are so many older people on the streets, unlike when those days when he was a student. And of course, you realize that he's alone. Pamela has not been coming to visit, and maybe she's even feeling a bit guilty about it. And Dr. Afolabi decides that I will not tell Pamela what I've experienced about her father on the store, on the supermarket, because he feels that maybe it will not make things any better. And maybe that also, as we discussed, therefore we ask ourselves, how would you describe Dr. Afolabi? What kind of a person is he? And from here, unlike the experience with Fiona, you realize we are seeing a face of Dr. Afolabi that you probably had not seen in his work. That when it comes to family, when it comes to Pamela, he's a bit kind, he's a bit easier. And that is actually noticed when we read on and realize that his experience when they go back to Nigeria, there is an experience they have. But it's also important for me to just mention on what happens on page 68 that this girl is telling another lady there at the convenience store and says, "Bless, you saw that poor fellow." She tipped her head towards the old man's direction. We get people like this in here all time. They want to touch and be touched, see and be seen, listen and be listened to, not watch television at home alone all day. It doesn't hurt to oblige every now and then, does it? And so basically what that is talking about is the need for human connection, the need for fellowship, the need for love, the need for someone to just be around you. And you can never be able to live alone like an island, that everybody wants to touch other people and be touched, to be seen and see other people, to be listened to, and you also listen to other people. And so therefore you realize that that is an important theme as far as this book is concerned. We'll look at that. And so we realize, we therefore move on to Dr. Afolabi and how we are told about his family. That is on page 70, that on his way home from the convenience store, he comes across a girl who is just playing around on the road. And the kid is biracial, that he's born by a black mother and of course a white father. And so Dr. Afolabi takes us to why he's where he is with Pamela, because they don't have a child. And why don't they have a child? We are told that Pamela wanted 2 children, but she wanted adopted. She didn't want to give birth to children. But Dr. Afolabi really wanted children. But now that Pamela says that Africa has already so many children, she does not see why she should add her own. Actually, you should actually help the ones who are already born and adopt them and help them and serve them and be their parents. But there's no need of me adding to an already existing problem. That is how Pamela looks at the issue of childbearing. But of course, Dr. Afolabi is not for it, and they have kept talking about it, and they've never even followed up to really adopt. And we'll see how this plays out later on at the Nigerian home, because this is a foreshadow of something that we are about to see. But before they get to Nigeria, that is on page 70, we see Mr. Longway finding himself seated next to Dr. Afolabi. And we understand that this looks like it was a bit arranged, because how did he find himself seated to Dr. Afolabi? That there is a passenger from first class who threw a tantrum and said he does not want to sit there anymore. He wants to sit in the economy class. And so finally, Pamela had to excuse herself and had to go sit in the first class. And Dr. Afolabi gets a neighbor, and this neighbor is Mr. Longway. Remember, Dr. Afolabi had been hired had been requested by the heads of state to go and just make sure that he appears in the summit, for him to represent and come and explain to them and actually just stamp the way Omega So now, when Mr. Longway comes in, he actually complicates the situation because Dr. Afolabi is left thinking, do you want me to abandon the Way Omega so that now I adopt Path Alpha? But he says, no, I actually think if you forsake Path, the Way Omega, you will actually confuse, you not achieve the purpose for that we would have wanted you to achieve. So he says you stay along the path of Way Omega and play along and look like you're with them, but ideally we would want you to introduce Path Alpha during the summit, and as you do that, we would want you to be a guide, would want you to help, would want you to be the one to show the way to 4 observers, 4 people that will bring along. So your assignment is handling those 4 people and making sure that during the summit they show up and their voice is heard, and make sure that Path Alpha sees the light of day. And so Dr. Afolabi is a bit confused on how to do that, but by the end of the discussion, he is given the document to go have a look at it, and is told that they will get in touch, and he's hoping that he'll be able to have considered coming together. And so that, and it's important to note on page 72 where he says that unless there is a will, when he's actually Dr. Afolabi is trying to challenge what is so different between Way Omega and what else, the new thing you're trying to propose. And he, just like where we said at the beginning of the text, talks about the corruption and the impunity. He says the first is a crime, the second protects from the punishment. So the first one, that is corruption, is a crime that is committed by people, but now the second one, that is impunity, it is what protects the punishment that you should have gotten from being corrupt and so on. So the second is another crime. The first rewards with kickbacks. That is Africa in its present state. Now can it change? And so out of that, Dr. Afolabi is able to see from Longway's point of view that actually it is true. There's so much. Remember, Dr. Afolabi had written a book, The Failure of States. And so in his previous discussions, Dr. Afolabi is aware that actually the African state has failed terribly, and so it is nothing new that Mr. Longway is presenting to him. He actually knows it is true. Actually, as a country, as a continent, we have failed. And so I saw something very interesting on page 73 when he's talking about Path Alpha. He says it differs from Way Omega like day from night. You see, whereas Way Omega is top driven, it lacks the will for its implementation. Path Alpha is bottom led and has that will. Now, come to the point. We would like you to guide to guide 4 Path Alpha travelers from whom AGDA is sending as observers to the very summit you'll be going to serve as the advisor. And so actually you realize that even according to AGDA, they also have a bottom-up issue here where they are saying that Path Alpha is bottom-led. It's talking to the masses. It is taking care of the masses. And maybe out of that, it's also good to mention that out of that, he accepted, and he said he'll look into it. And of course, now he's on board. Now, when they alight and when they arrive at Nigeria, this is where some drama comes in on the issue of his divorce. They realize that when they get to the house, there's a young man called Issa. He's a boy. And Issa communicates to Pamela that there is someone in your bedroom. And of course, it is not interesting when you come from a safari and you hear there's someone who is in your bedroom. And she wants to know what's going on. Just before even the boy gets to answer, there is a big man who comes from the bathroom. And we are told that actually he was very scaring. He was very scaring because of even he had a scar on his face, a very scary scar. When you come across someone who is big and big sized, and he's having a scar on his face, and his face does not look very interesting, and you're meeting them for the first time, of course you'll be afraid. And later on is when we realize that this is the cousin to Dr. Afolabi. And why are they here? They are here because they have a girl that the village people have met, and they have decided this Pamela white woman that our son Dr. Afolabi has will never be able to bear children. She's not interested in giving us children, and so therefore we want to replace her. We want to give Dr. Afolabi another woman, another girl who he can marry, so that at least he can get a child. And that girl is called Nimbo. And so Nimbo is in the bedroom. And Dr. Afolabi is also equally confused because Femi or his family did not tell him, by the way, when you're coming back, you'll find having brought your girl. So he's equally surprised. I want to hope so. And so therefore, Pamela is acting up. She's annoyed, of course, and which is understandable. She goes to the bedroom and throws the girl from the bedroom, and the girl is stepping out. And Femi is asking her, can you stop going out? Stay here. And of course, Femi has his place, his farm, of course, you do not even want to play with him, and so on. But what is interesting of Dr. Afolabi, when you're discussing him, you realize that he comes out as a very considerate man. He comes out as one who is trying to protect his family. He's trying to protect Pamela from all that is going on. He can clearly see that Pamela is really upset, and he's really trying to make it look a bit easier and help her deal with it, because she's insisting these people must leave the house right now. But again, Dr. Afolabi feels, how can they leave right now? It's so late at night. They can sleep and wake up tomorrow in the morning. And Pamela says, no, they must leave. Your cousin and everybody else and this girl, they must leave. And of course, it gets to a point where Dr. Afolabi also puts his foot down and says they cannot leave at night. And Pamela says, then if they cannot leave, then I'm the one who is leaving. And of course, you can see how assertive she's been, how firm she's been, even when talking to Femi and also talking to Daktari, and saying that actually let them know that this is my house and they cannot talk to me like that, they cannot bring people, and so on. And so therefore, basically, we realize that that is how that Dr. Afolabi found himself without a wife. That is how he was divorced, because by the end of the day, when she left that in the middle of the night with her balls, with her bags, sorry, we are told that a week later, she phoned Dr. Afolabi from her father's home in Boston. She had filed for divorce. She told him that little separation on their flight out of Washington to Nigeria had been a precursor of that much bigger separation. So you realize just from nowhere, Dr. Afolabi has no wife. And I actually sympathize with him. I empathize with him, because what has caused this to happen is his family, who think that he should have had children. As much as I know he wanted children, I feel like probably that was not in their place to decide. And again, Pamela, also, maybe as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, maybe I would want to hear even from you as far as you're concerned. Do you think Pamela overreacted? What would cause a woman divorce a husband because when they went home they found another girl has been brought by the community? Do you think she was being fair, or do you think maybe she was looking for an opportunity to walk away from this marriage, and now it's presented itself and she decided to take advantage and just runs and says, now this is the time for me to just divorce this man? Because I keep thinking, was that fair? Was it fair for Dr. Afolabi? He didn't ask this girl to come. He has no intentions of marrying her, but a week later, you have divorced someone because of what happened. I want to hear what you think about Pamela. Do you think she really loved Dr. Afolabi? Do you think he deserved that? Or was there a different way that Pamela would have handled that issue? So basically, that is it in chapter 5 of the Fathers of Nations. We are carrying on well, and in chapter 6 is what we are going to look at next. So kindly make sure that you join me in the next video as we look at chapter 6, and please remember to share this video. Remember to subscribe. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, it means the world to me if you subscribe. And so please share it with the students in your life. The parents would be interested in their children watching this. I'll be happy for that. So see you in the next one when we are talking about chapter 6 of the Fathers of Nations. Thank you.